Hello, this is Arif Rahman, coming to live after a long time and very little preparation. So you might see this really not a very professional presentation. And I was just talking to our guest earlier, and it's not going to be a nice one. And the introduction is over, the beginning is over. So this discussion here today is 22nd of October 2017. This is Arif Rahman coming live from London, and we have a very auspicious guest with us today, Armin Navabi, and we will hear from him about his life and what he's been involved with lately. A lot of you know him from Atheist Republic, but he also has a lot of other different activism going on, and we'll hear from him about those things. So without further ado, let's go and meet Armin. Hi,
Hi.
Armin. You're live now, and we can.
Okay.
Oh goodness, there is already 70 people watching, so I better behave myself. This is Armin Navabi of Atheist Republic, and do you want to introduce yourself, Armin, for a quick second?
Um, well, I'll just do it quickly because that's boring. I'm Armin Navabi. I'm a founder of Atheist Republic. Wrote a book, Why There's No God. I'm a co-host at this I'm an ex-Muslim from Iran, living in Canada now. Started a podcast with three other ex-Muslims called Secular Jihadists from the Middle East, which you should check out. It's a pretty amazing podcast. We often disagree, which makes it very much more interesting. So, yeah, that's it.
No, that was very short and sweet.
Yeah.
So, so many different things. I wanted to start with discussion about the Atheist Republic because I think this is the one reason I think I met you first through Atheist Republic, and with a few special discussions, or should I say special occasions, and one of them was I think the Kaaba, the Rainbow Kaaba, and what happened
Oh, yeah.
afterwards. I asked you about this um, little work of art. Do you want to give us a bit of history about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking it was, how the Drum Muhammad Day, it tries to tell people that you can't censor us just because you find it offensive. But a lot of people on the left found it that, why are you trying to be so emotionally abusive to Muslims, right? And, I felt like they're not getting the point, right? I felt like they're not getting the point that, if you find something offensive, you get to not look at it, you don't get to censor people. So I tried to think about how I can do it with something, because, the the left and the Islamic community have gotten together, and a lot of ex-Muslims find this weird because a lot of the thing that the left fights against is basically what Islam is for. So I thought, like, let's find a contradiction in these views that is sacred to the left, but is very offensive to Muslims, and to see if any leftists are going to come and say defend that. And I thought, like, okay, well, gay rights is something very important to the left, which is for good reasons, and it's something very offensive to many Muslims. So I just put the Kaaba, which is the most sacred thing to Muslims, one of the most sacred things to Muslims, and the gay flag, which is something that the left. I don't want to call them liberals because, I think like a lot of them the people that we're complaining about are not really liberals because they're not fighting for liberal values. But anyways, so I took the rainbow flag, and this was when in the United States gay marriage became legalized. And basically the point I was trying to make is like, okay, this is a great step in the right direction, but let's not stop there. Let's not think this fight is over. This is just the United States. This is a global battle. Gay rights matter everywhere, not just in the United States. And gay men and women are being discriminated against and killed all over the world. And this is a battle that we have to keep fighting until the very last place the very last place people imagine that you're going to have gay rights is going to be Saudi Arabia, right? So I say until even here gay rights are recognized, and gay people are treated as equals to everybody else, right? And so that was the message, and quite, um,
What happened
you know,
afterwards? That is, I think,
well, so
is very interesting, and that's where we found a lot of similarity between us Bangladeshi bloggers were facing, and I think Atheist Republic experienced for the first time. What happened?
well, it wasn't for the first time, but it went to a higher level than. So we do get death threats from time to time, but we don't take them seriously. Just like, but then this time this got shared by a few imams and stuff, and people lost their mind, right? I think they got a little bit desensitized with the whole Muhammad drawing thing a little bit because we did it so much. But this was a new, I mean, drawing Muhammad is just drawing him, but then the gay flag, which is something so offensive to them, and putting it right on top of Kaaba, that was something that they've never seen before, and they weren't ready for it. And
That was a system shock, massive shock, I would say.
that
And
was a huge shock.
Atheist
And
Republic got severely attacked, and so many levels, right?
right, we were getting pictures of people being decapitated sent to us. We got so many, and a lot of the threats are death threats, but also a lot of rape threats to our moms, our sisters, our daughter, especially just the females. I like, even when it's you that they're offended about, they threaten that they're gonna do something. I don't know what it is, but I think this.
I think we can. I know why this is, because in Islamist in a Muslim mind, because it's kind of patriarchal, male dominating, everyone else surrounding him, the female kind, are actually either their responsibility or their property. So, for example, if you, an analogy would be, if you're angry with somebody, you go and slash somebody's car's tire, or break their house property, something like
Right.
that. So, to a Muslim, a way to hurt somebody is also to hurt his possessions. In their mind, is to hurt their women, hurt their mother, and all these things. So in their mind, they're thinking, by threatening your parents or your wife or your girlfriend, is their kind of, in their mind, they're threatening you more. It's a very convoluted way of thinking, but I think
Right.
that's actually the reason.
Yeah, I think it's something that is yours and is pure, and you're, a lot of people, and they coming and damaging it. It's kind of like, yeah, but one of them told me, like, I'm gonna come and rape your mother, and I'm like, well, my mom died from cancer. I was trying to shame him, and he said, well, I'm gonna come and find her corpse, and I'm gonna rape her. I'm like, okay, wow, all right, that's a new low for me but. Yeah, but it got so bad that we even had the Vancouver Police Department had to come in, and because one of the people that was working with me at the time actually reported this to the police, and I didn't think they're going to take it seriously, because I was like, why are you reporting this to police? This is coming from foreign countries. But they actually came to my house, and they're like, these are terrorist threats. We need to document them. I'm like, are you serious? These are teenagers, keyboard warriors. It's not serious. But they came, and they had to copy that. We had to copy all the comments, and they're like, okay. But
And
yeah, some people on
also,
our
I
team
think
were pretty scared.
Atheist
Yeah.
Republic as a online portal, that also got banned and kind of suspended by Facebook as well, because of some massive campaign of reporting, isn't it?
Yeah, but that wasn't because of this, which
Oh,
is weird. I think I don't know how the algorithm works. I think the ratio of likes and comments compared to the number of reporting. I think this got so much shared that the percentage of reports was insignificant to how much attention it was getting,
oh,
right?
I see.
So I don't know, but what we got taken out for other posts, um, 3 times, and we came back 3 times. I tell people Jesus died and resurrected once, but Atheist Republic has so far died and been resurrected three
So,
times.
Atheist
Yeah,
Republic is actually 3 times powerful than Jesus, Christianity.
Jesus.
Wow,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
No, but
amazing.
I mean, Facebook. I mean, these are not. Facebook is not coming in and looking at these posts, and it's just numbers, right?
Hmm.
Every time they came and looked at it, they brought the page back. The problem is that our page is so big that then when we complain about these things, Facebook notices, right? But the problem is that a lot of other smaller pages get taken out, like some Arabic atheist pages, some Arabic science pages, and they're smaller and they get taken down and they never come back, right? So the problem is that, this discourages new activists, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a big activist and you already have a lot of people know about you, it's harder to take you out. But we don't want the activism to just be only Atheist Republic or big names like Seth Andrews. These are we want new people to join and spread ideas, and this discourages them because nobody. So one thing we say is that if your page is taken down, please come on Twitter. My handle is @Armin Navabi. Let me know, because Atheist Republic Twitter and Facebook gets so many notifications and emails that we sometimes miss a few. So come to me personally and tell me that your page was taken down, so that maybe we could bring it. We can't
This
do
is
anything
like
other than bring
digital
attention.
terrorism. Terrorism in a digital format, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, you did a great job documenting this. You went into their secret groups, but they have thousands of members, and you basically showed the step-by-step process they
Yeah,
go to take a
because
page down.
us Bangladeshi bloggers, we have been fighting this from very long time, for the almost like last 10 years, and actually the biggest the farmhouse, I would say, is actually a lot of Bangladeshi Islamists, and they have their own ghetto and big groups where they actually share links and detailed discussion on how to go out and kill a page. And the method is very simple. They come up with like codes that someone has to just copy and paste and just click yes, and apparently Facebook then takes notice of it and takes it as a brute force attack, and they don't have any defense, and we don't have any defense. A lot of our competitors' account got deleted. We got a lot of our groups got deleted and hacked and attacked. It has been happening for a long time. So I thought, if Atheist Republic is also facing, let's document it. And I think recently when Malaysia happened, is it not Malaysia?
Yeah, it was Malaysia. Yeah.
Malaysia happened. I think that particular document also got used and referred to a lot of times. And so,
Yes.
can you mention?
I sent that link to people I use it as a reference. I sent it to reporters. I sent it to ex-Muslims of North America. They did a great job at starting a campaign against this, and I think it was them that got our page back. So that was very nice of them.
That is
But
very
go on,
lucky,
sorry.
yeah. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
What happened there? Well, Atheist Republic Malaysian Bureau.
Yeah. So consulate. Yeah. So we have these groups in major cities for Atheist Republic. We call it Atheist Republic consulates, and basically it's just atheists finding other atheists and getting together and meet each other. We have in Manila, we have a huge group. In Mexico, we have many groups in different cities. In Davao, in Indonesia, many cities. So what happened is that we told the consulate admins, like, hey, if you get together, because we saw people sending us pictures, like, okay, if you get together and get these pictures, can you ask everybody, get everyone's consent for us to share it? Because these pictures are so heartwarming to see that atheists are finding other atheists. Because a lot of atheists, when they become when they feel like they're pretty lonely, like a lot of them feel like there must be not that many of them, right? Especially in more religious countries, right? And then they come to these consulates and like, holy shit, there's so many of us. I'll send you another one from Manila for you, so you see how big these meetings can get, which is, and in Philippines, for example, atheism is also very looked down upon. And so we got these pictures and people were sharing them, and we shared it on the main page, and our main page has like 1,700,000 followers. So when we posted these on our pages, it got a lot of comments, people sending messages of support, encouragement. So a lot of people felt good about the fact that, yeah, we managed to get a meeting together and we met. And and other consulates started noticing that this is something we do, and they wanted to do it as well. So one of them was the Kuala Lumpur, and Kuala Lumpur consulate is also a very active one, right? So they went and they're like, we want to do the same thing. So if you notice in the picture, just one person, I think we didn't get consent from. So we put like block that person's face, right? But other than that, everybody was okay with it. And you have to understand, Malaysia is not like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, right? So they haven't had experience with any major crackdowns on atheists or anything like that. So they felt this is okay, right? But apparently they were kind of shocked about what happened as much as we were, which was we had like a government official coming and saying, like, so first of all, it got attention with a lot of Muslims in Malaysia, right? And apparently Malaysian Muslims don't understand the difference between being Malay and being Muslim, right? They think once you're Malay, because there's many different races in Malaysia, right? But if you're Malay, you're Muslim, right? You can't leave you can't just be like, I'm not Muslim.
It's beyond their comprehension that how can somebody be not Muslim?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Chinese, they accept that. But if you're Malay, like, no, you're.
Oh, I see.
Muslim.
If you're a certain race, which is like a non-Chinese looking, more like Indian looking, then you definitely has to be
No,
Muslim, right?
no, okay, because Malaysia is very multicultural, right? So there's many different races there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have the same standards for. It's just like for them, if you're Malay, you're Muslim. That's it, right? So, but I think even if you're Indian and you're Muslim and then leave Islam, they don't. I don't.
Oh, I see.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
They don't give a shit, right?
Right.
But so basically, some imams came like, why are these Muslims attending atheist events? And we're thinking like, maybe because they're not Muslim, right? Man, no, like we have to find these Muslims that are going to atheist events. But and then it got very, so many Muslims started pointing at this.
Got a bit ostracized and then threatened by the government themselves
Yeah,
as well. They need to start investigating.
At first it was the imams, but then the government got involved. And basically, this is what the minister specifically said. He said, we need to, I'm not exaggerating, we need to hunt down these atheists. Hunt them down, right? And and these people are like, oh my God, what the fuck is going to happen to us, right? So I was told not to go over the details of some of the things that happened.
No, that's okay. I think for us, it's not a new thing. As in Bangladeshi bloggers, we have seen since 2013 that this has been going on. While people got killed, I think, unfortunately, in Malaysia, and thank Darwin, it didn't happen anything like that. But in Bangladesh, a lot of people got killed, and then the government stepped in and said, yes, because you said these things, it's okay to kill, and if somebody kills you, we are not going to take responsibility. Right. Even the Prime Minister herself actually said that in public. And Bangladesh, and then all these countries are so-called Muslim countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, and obviously who are under the control of Saudi Arabia. They have this standard response kind of ingrained in their machinery, where if somebody says anything against Islam or even leaves Islam, some example has to be kind of made out of them, and that's what I think Indonesian our friends have kind of witnessed. And what Muslims wants to do, or the Islamist wants to do, is to implant fear in people's heart by creating an example, by going down really, really hard, and that's what may have happened there.
So I sent you two pictures right now. One from Mexico. Let me see, which city in Mexico is this? This is Mexico
City. But it's a bit too late for me to show them because I have to be.
But, okay, these are. All right, these are. Let me explain. These are similar pictures from the Malaysian one, but these are one from Philippines and one from Mexico, and these are religious Christian countries. But there was no statement of any government officials coming and saying we need to hunt these people down or anything like that. Right? And for Philippines, I really want to point to the Philippines ones because people a lot of times say like, oh, these are not about. This is not about Islam. This is about governments that are. These people here are, it's a third world country. I'm like, well, in, Malaysia is a more advanced country when it comes to economy than Philippines, right? And Philippines is one of the most religious Christian countries in the world, right? And they're in the same location, like same area on the globe. So there is no, it's Islam, okay? Like everything else about these two countries is the same, or Malaysia is ahead, right? So we now are looking at one of the most modern Islamic countries, supposedly moderate Islamic countries in the world, and people always point to Malaysia and Indonesia, like, look, not all Islamic countries are like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan or Bangladesh. You could be like Malaysia. Like, okay, look, this is the best you can get under an Islamic regime, right? The best you could get is for the minister to be able to say, we need to hunt down the atheists. Imagine if anybody said that in any government about Muslims or about black people or about Jews. Okay, so Trump said like a travel ban against Muslims, and that got a lot of attention, as it should, right? But imagine if Trump came out and said, we need to find and hunt down the Muslims in the United States. Hunt down the Muslims in the United States. Imagine if Trump or some other minister, anywhere, said we need to find and hunt down black people. This would be international news everywhere, right? Yeah. But if you say that about atheists, nobody, I mean, this got attention thanks to people like Richard Dawkins tweeted this, Majid Nawaz tweeted this, the humanists of...
Even Richard Dawkins or Majid Nawaz, whoever you mentioned, none of them actually have any oil, reserve, do they? So since they don't have any oil reserve and they don't buy, ammunition and military arsenal or hardware from United States, I think atheists don't really count.
Yeah, no, that's my point, though. My point is that my point is that it got some attention, but relative to if it compared to the attention that this would get, and the only attention it got was because these people with a large following tweeted it. But even this compared to if the target were Muslims, Jews, or black people, I'm not saying it shouldn't get attention if those people were targeted. Of course, it should get attention, right? If some people said like we need to hunt down the Muslims, right? But why is it that atheists are such an easy target and nobody gives a shit, right?
Well, because I have some theory. We can talk about the theory. Right. My theory is very simple. It's that because the world is actually the people's mind in the world is managed by these religions, or should I say dumbify? The religion is used as a tool to soften people's thinking abilities and just keep them as a slave of the system as in the capitalist and other systems. And if the atheists are saying, think for yourself, don't buy any bullshit, and what that makes people or the atheists or the ex-Muslims is that they then immediately start to question things, not only religious indoctrination, but also other things that have been sold to them as bullshit all along. And the system doesn't want that. Not the Christians, not the Muslims. They don't want intelligent people crawling all over the place because that is bad for business. And that's my theory. And that's why too many intelligent and too many thinking people are really bad for business. That's my theory.
But by the way, I just want to give credit to the International Humanist and Ethical Union, because they managed to bring we had the UN. What is it called? The United Nations, when all the countries get together at the UN in New York.
UNHCR?
Yeah. Well, the International Humanist...
IHU, International Humanist and Ethical Union. Yeah, I work with them quite closely as well.
They brought this Malaysia issue to the UN Human Rights Council, and they basically had a statement and they read it to all the members there, which was pretty amazing. I think this was the first time. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but this was a pretty good. I mean, it's nothing relative to other human rights violations, which should get attention. But I think like discrimination against atheists globally is something huge and is not getting as much attention as it deserves, right?
Yeah.
And also, I just want to give credit to, I don't know which Islamic think tank, I want to give credit to them. They came out and said that, we're Muslim and we don't think atheists should be. In Malaysia, there was one think tank that came out and said, atheists, Muslims get to leave Islam. I mean, they're being inconsistent with Islam, but I would argue that, but at the same time, they're being good human beings
That's what it matters, actually. That's what it matters. So, moving away from eastern part of the world all the way to Canada, and I just wanted to, you were giving credit to, while we were talking about the Atheist Republic matter, I wanted to mention a few of the other people in the team, I think, in your team, who has done really good job of maintaining and managing and there is a big team that works for the Atheist Republic group and the blog and the page as well, right?
Yes, we have a lot of volunteers and a lot of people on the staff, and they are working 24/7 from all around the world. It's amazing, and I can't thank them enough. And also, I want to thank the consulate admins in every city that are managing, because they are becoming a thing of their own, like the people in Manila, people in Mexico City, and people, everybody in Pakistan, or anybody that is managing the Atheist Republic consulate of their city. They're doing so many great things, and they understand the situations in their location.
Sorry, that was me. Somebody complained that there is no sound, unfortunately, but I just tested and the sound is here. So whoever complained, please, turn on your volume on or on, then we'll be fine. So moving on to, obviously, it's a team effort, so I definitely...
volume. I just confirmed.
Everything okay?
Yeah. No, do you have volume? I have. It's running. The video is running live on a different screen for me. I just checked that you have audio.
I did. So. I just checked as well, so it's fine. Sorry for the interruption. And so the title, you just shared this to Atheist Republic page, and before we go to that topic, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about this secular jihadist podcast that you are part of. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so I went to Faisal. You know him, right?
Faisal al-Mukhtar, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, do you want to start a podcast? And he was like, I'm a little bit busy. And I'm like, no, don't worry, I'll work around your schedule. And he was like, okay, sounds good. And I did the graphics and everything. And then Yasmin Muhammad, she came and said, like, can I join you guys? And Faisal said, like, yeah, come join. And like, okay, I'm going to go also get somebody, because I think because I was going to go to Ali, but then I felt maybe it's going to, I don't know if he was going to say yes, but then once Yas joined, I was like, okay, let's see if we could get Ali to join as well. So I went to Ali, Rizwi, and like, we have a podcast with Yasemin and Faisal, and do you want to join us? And Ali immediately said yes, so I was very happy. And then I didn't know Yasemin before that much. I met her once in an event, but then I was so impressed with her story and her ideas and her passion.
If I may ask you, because I need to keep the whole discussion within 1 hour, so to jump through all the topics, what is the...
So it's a podcast it's a podcast with 4 ex-Muslims from different backgrounds. So there's ex-Muslim from Iran, myself, ex-Muslim from Pakistan, which is Ali, ex-Muslim from Canada with an Egyptian background, which is Yasemin Muhammad, and ex-Muslim from Iraq, right? And we get together every week and we have a discussion, and we usually fight about different things, and we have different guests. And and it's amazing because I think it's right now the only ex-Muslim podcast out there, unless I'm missing. But it's, it's great because the topic is usually about Islam or ex-Muslims or relevant topic. And the good thing about it is that because we don't agree all the time, the audience, the listeners get to get different perspective on different issues, right? And it's amazing.
Okay.
And by the way, go on. Sorry.
No, go on. Carry on.
But
You're saying something?
one thing, so Ali Rizvi, he's the author of the Atheist Muslim book. Yasmin Muhammad, she's writing a book from Al Qaeda to atheism. I mean, she wrote it already. We just need to get it published.
Hang
But
on,
she's
did you say
publishing
Al
with Atheism.
Qaeda to Islam is atheism?
Yeah, she was married to the right hand man of Osama bin Laden.
Goodness. Wow.
And she has a daughter from him. So she wrote a book about that, which she's publishing with Atheist Republic. Her story is amazing, by the way. You should go watch some of her interviews. And Faisal, I think most people know Faisal.
I interviewed Faisal as well, and Ali Rizvi as well when his book came out. So I
Should
think
interview
your
us,
one
man.
was quite long pending, I would say. We've been
you should
trying to
also
get you on
interview
our
us.
show for some time now.
Yeah, you should interview Yasaman too then, because she has an amazing story. I think
You know
you're
what? I did not know. I mean, she was not in my radar, but now she is. I will hunt her down as much as I can. So you've shared this our discussion today with I think a bit of a cheeky forward saying Islam versus Nazism. What is that about?
Right.
Why did you bring Nazism into this?
No, because a lot of people, I mentioned that on our podcast, and I got a lot of attention for a lot of criticism for it, and I just wanted to defend my position, right? And if you compare Islam with Christianity, you don't get much shit for that, right? If you do, it's because people are saying Islam is worse. Why are you even comparing them? If you compare Nazism with communism, you're not going to get much shit for that either. But for some reason, comparing Islam with Nazism, right? People just lost their mind, and people are saying these two are not the same. And yeah, that's why we're comparing them, because if they were the same, there would be no point of comparing them. Right, they would be exactly the same, right? Right. You compare things that are different.
I did not know this. This is interesting. So you're saying you struck a nerve when you compared these two words?
Yeah, because people are saying, "Are you serious? Nazism is much worse. This encourages bigotry. This is too much. It's not even close. You're being offensive and shit like that, right?" And I was like, okay, so, and then I took it one step further. Then I'm like, okay, let me correct myself. I don't think Islam and Nazism are the same. I think Islam is worse. Right, and that was pretty. And here's how I defend this position. All right, people are like, really, you think Muslims are as bad as Nazis? I did not say that. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying Islam is worse than Nazism, right? And in fact, most Muslims are better than Islam. Most Nazis follow the Nazi ideology more closely than most Muslims follow Islam, right? The thing about Islam that makes it more dangerous is that it has more sugar coating around it, right? So more good people get conned by it. The fact that more good people call themselves Muslims, most good people will never call themselves a Nazi, right? But many good people call themselves a Muslim. The reason is that Islam is a dangerous ideology that is wrapped in a sugar coating, which it makes it harder to detect as a dangerous ideology. It takes advantage of more good people than Nazism can. Nazism is so disgusting and is so hateful, obviously hateful, that you really need hateful people to be able to spread it, right? Islam is a hateful ideology wrapped in some rainbows and butterflies and be nice to orphans and all that shit. So here's what I say. Imagine if you have a poison pill that smells and tastes like shit. So it's really hard to get people to take this. And if you take it, you'll die within a few hours. It's hard for you to convince people to take this pill unless you find people that actually enjoy the smell and taste of shit, which is hard to find. But if I find another poison pill that is wrapped in a sugar coating, and doesn't kill you right away, it might hurt your next generation, right? Then this pill is easier to get in the market and sell it. Islam is easier to spread. See, Christianity and Islam are dangerous ideologies, but they're much more clever than Nazism. You can't just come out and be like, fuck everybody, and think your ideology is going to spread. You have to be like, oh, be nice to your neighbor and also give us 10% of your income. Oh, these poor people, these orphans, and also kill the non-believers, like shit like that, right? So, and people are like, oh, how could you even suggest Islam is worse than Nazism? I'm like, so look at look at the world right now, right? How many countries right now are being run by authoritative Nazi regimes? How many?
United States of America?
No, seriously, how many?
I don't know. Is there any?
No, there's none. Zero. Okay?
Okay.
It's easy. And how many countries are being run by authoritative theocratic Islamic countries? Like regimes?
A lot.
Yeah. Right. So as of right now, there are more. How many people are being killed by Nazis right now? Right? How many people are being killed because of Islamic doctrine? How many, like, these people are saying, like, how could you say such a thing in such a political climate? In the United States, you have Charlottesville, you have the alt-right coming back. You're like, yeah, that's horrible, and we should talk about it, and we should call these people out. But we live in a world that we also have fucking people are dying in Yemen because Shias and Sunnis are fighting against each other, right? These people. When was the last time you talked about the children dying? You're like, oh, one person died in Charlottesville, and that's a tragedy. And at the same time, in the same day, hundreds of people were dying in Yemen, right?
Yeah.
And it's a war between the Shia people use Shia ideology against Sunni ideology and vice versa, right? And you don't see that. Like, how could you? They say you're tone deaf. You're not saying that this is not the right thing to say at the right time. Well, you're tone deaf because you're just looking at your own fucking neighborhood. You're not taking the global perspective. More people are being harmed by Islam right now than white supremacist ideology. And guess what? I'm not saying people that are being hurt by white supremacist ideology is not a tragedy. It is a tragedy, and you should point it out. But Islam is a greater danger, and that's not to say this is not a big deal. It is a big deal, and you should call it out. And when you see racists, you should point out that this is racism, and you shouldn't when alt-right is coming back, you should call it out. The thing is that they say, like, look at what happened during World War II and Nazi Germany. How many people died, right? And you're comparing that to Islam. And like, okay, it came. And it lasted for how many fucking years? This was not an ideology that could have survived. It was in power for how long? Right? Yes, it's coming back, but it's nothing compared to what it was. How long Islam has been in power?
Oh,
right?
Long. Very long time.
Yeah, hundreds of years, because Islam knows how to survive. Islam is but when I say, and this is not some evil geniuses that designed Islam in a way that it could survive. This is just the natural selection of memes, right? So it's in the evolution, in the selection of memes, Islam was a stronger meme to survive. Nazism, when it rises, it gets destroyed so fast because it doesn't have the sugar coating that you need for you to spread, right? Islam gets in power faster, spreads faster, and it has had astronomically higher number of victims over the years, and even today, than compared to Nazi Germany. Here's what I say. Per year in power, Nazism is much worse than Islam. The number of victims of Nazism per year in power is worse for Nazism. But because Islam gets to stay in power longer, the total of number of victims of Islam will be much higher than Nazism. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And and these people are, when these people are saying you have to look at the United States and see what the situation is, and you have to adjust your tone accordingly. You can't say something like this when you have an alt-right rise in the United States. And like you are being so fucking selfish. Fuck that. You are not. We are living. We are sharing this planet with our fellow human beings. The victims of Islam are Muslims. If you thinking these white supremacists, this alt-right people are hurting Muslims, they are, and we should defend Muslims against it. But guess who? But Muslims are being a victim of Islam more than they are a victim of, white supremacists.
Yep.
Right? And again, every time I say this, I have to clarify. I'm not saying we shouldn't point it out when these assholes on the right are being mean to, violating their human rights. And if you don't want to point out that people in Yemen are being killed because of Islamic ideology, if you don't want to point out that the Basij are hunting down young people just in Iran just because of what they were wearing. If you don't want to point out how people in Saudi Arabia are being beheaded for fucking witchcraft, if you don't want to point out that bloggers in Bangladesh are being hunted down just because of their opinions, if you don't want to point out that a Christian couple was tortured for a fucking week because somebody alleged that they disrespected the Quran, if you don't want to point this out, it's fine. Okay? But when we fucking say Islam is dangerous, don't go be like, no, you can't say that because look at the political climate in the United States. Fuck that. Look at the political climate in the whole world. We're not going to adjust our tone because of what's happening in the United States, because you're ignoring what's happening in the whole world. We're trying to give in Canada. You're like, well, you're in Canada and the United States, so you should acknowledge the political climate where you are. Yeah, but this is the only place where we could give a voice to people that are in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran and Bangladesh. Just because we're in Canada, that doesn't mean that we can't speak about that. It means that we have to speak about it more because they can speak about it over there. And what's sad, and people are like, oh, you shouldn't compare Islam with Nazism. You should compare ISIS with Nazism, right? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Just read the Quran and read Mein Kampf, right? Just compare them. Just compare how Bukhari talks about Bukhari, which is the major hadith for Sunni Islam, right? Mm-hmm. The number one authoritative hadith. Just read how it speaks about the Jews. It's way worse than how Hitler speaks about the Jews. Look at how the Quran speaks about non-believers. But hey, nobody gives a shit about non-believers, right? Because
isn't it true that Ahmadinejad, the Iranian president, at some point said, kind of tried to support the Holocaust himself?
No, he said it never happened. But fuck him. I'm not talking about Muslims. I'm talking about Islam. Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing: Ahmadinejad and all these fucking ISIS people. Most Muslims are not like that. Okay. Most Muslims are good people. All right. But that's the genius of Islam, because it doesn't just take fucking crazy people to be able to spread its hateful ideology. Islam manages to even take advantage of good people to spread its hateful ideology. That's what makes it more fucking dangerous, mm-hmm. right? My grandma is fucking Muslim, and she's the sweetest person, one of the sweetest people I know, right? So, but my grandma probably would never be a fucking Nazi. I don't know. Actually, I don't know how many German, I don't want to get into that, but anybody in the right condition might support something, but I just know that anything like Nazism would not survive for too long, because it takes too much hate to be able to agree with those things, right? Mm-hmm. You have to sugarcoat it, and this is why I'm so worried about the reform movement, because it's contributing to the sugarcoating of Islam, right?
Well, you said earlier that Islam survives, and I think this reform movement it's another attempt at surviving, because it
Exactly.
knows when situations are changing and it needs to suddenly turn into a very nice and gentle person, and then when things are right, it will turn into a vicious creature and kind of destroy everything around it, and then progress until it needs to evolve again, and that's how it survives.
Exactly. It just takes a back seat and just waits its turn, and it comes back because no matter how much you change the way it's expressed itself, the Quran is going to always be the fucking same, right? Unless you throw away the Quran and be like, okay, the Quran is not Islamic. As
Mm.
if you manage to say the Quran has nothing to do with Islam, that's when I'd be like, okay, maybe now you have a chance. But until that day, like imagine the day that you actually manage to say that and people are like, oh, look at Christianity in reform Christianity. Martin Luther had nothing to do with reforming Christianity. Okay, it was, Martin Luther was making people be more true to the Bible, not less, not ignore the Bible. It wasn't the Reformation that made Christianity, humbled Christianity into submission. It was the Enlightened movement that made humble Christianity. It was people that ignored Christianity, that it was secularism and better
I
ideas
already have two
that put
questions that I need
Christianity
to ask
back.
you, and
What?
you asked me to interrupt you whenever I want, so I am going to
Yeah.
interrupt you on two things. First is the recent one you just mentioned about enlightenment, and I've read articles recently, and it's my also perception is that the whole enlightenment movement that started like with the French Revolution and kind of progressed this world to this state. Apparently, it's rolling backwards now. The Enlightenment movement and the progressives, the work they have done, it's actually being erased, and we are now gradually going back to the so-called Middle Ages. What's your perception about that?
Well, I mean, look at. I don't know. I don't know if that's okay. I will look at, instead of looking right now, I want to give you, look at just Iran and Turkey, right? During Ataturk's time and during Reza Shah's time, if you went to Iran and Turkey, you would have never imagined that Islamic theocracy would ever have such a comeback in these countries. You would have never imagined. You're like, okay, Islam went the way of Christianity. It's done, right? But what Ataturk and Reza Shah did, they forced secularism on people instead of trying to educate people. And this is the problem. Islam will take a back seat, but it will come back. You need to reach out to the people. This is what something I disagree with Faisal Nakam, because he wants to have a top-down approach on destroying Islam. I'm like, you can't do it. It was been tried by Reza Shah and Ataturk. It actually backfired. You have to reach out to Muslims, right? You have to go and reach out to people. Anything else, Islam, if you victimize Muslims, the meme that is Islam, it loves that, it uses that. That's how it grows. That's how Islam grows, by you violating Muslims' human rights
Yeah,
and
the
trying to oppress them.
victimhood.
Yeah, don't do that. First of all, mostly don't do that because you're an asshole if you do that to your fellow human beings. But also don't do that because it doesn't work. If your goal is defeat Islam, the only way you could defeat Islam is by reaching out to Muslims, and the only way you could reach out to Muslims is by being nice to Muslims, right? So people say ban Islam. What the fuck does that even mean? How are you going to do that? How are you going to ban Islam?
Hmm.
Like, I don't even understand. Ban Islam? Like, are you going to tell people that they can't say something? Or, okay, and are you going to ban the Quran? Well, great job. You're going to make Islam grow faster if you try to do that, right?
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
would love it if you do that. That's how they grow.
Well, at
But
least we can try fueling it, because at this moment, as far as I know, United States, United Kingdom are actively fueling Islamism, and because they have regional and other political interest and different types of interest, and that's why so far, as I heard that they had very good relationship with the Saudi Arabia and the Islam spreading machinery, because they were kind of scratching each other's back. So as long as that can be controlled, I think there is a possibility of this going less powerful. That means the seculars can be, in on the front seat again and try to try to, as you say, educate the Muslims. But this is not happening anymore. We can see that Islam is still being,
It's getting
fueled.
worse. Like, look at
Yeah.
Malaysia and Indonesia that used to be the examples of how Islam could be. They're going backwards, right?
Hmm.
Turkey is going backwards, right? It's going
Exactly.
becoming more Islamic. And another thing is, like, just the example that you had in Malaysia, right? That minister, he's the government official, is still in power, right? Imagine if it do you, like, in Saudi Arabia, atheism is now a terrorist act.
Yeah.
Atheism is an idea is a terrorist act now in Saudi Arabia. In Iran, it's punished. In 13 countries, atheism is punishable by death. How many countries in the world does a government official come and get to say, hunt down people that are not white? How many
The
countries?
numbers are growing. That's my concern. And
Wait,
that
no,
that
I'm not government official. I'm talking about which. Name me one. Name
well,
me one.
Bangladesh was saying it not directly, but kind of convoluted way,
No, no.
saying
The Bangladesh is saying that we need to hunt down people that
no,
are
not
not white.
directly. But what I'm trying to say, the implied meaning is that if you say something, if you get killed by the Islamists, then government
No,
will do
no.
nothing.
That's my point. I'm saying government officials get to say that if you're against Islam, we'll come down and find you and hunt you down. I agree
Mm.
with you, right? Bangladesh is like that. Saudi Arabia is like that. Iran is like that. Pakistan, people are like that in Pakistan. Malaysia is now becoming like that, but not as extreme, but still. Indonesia, some parts of Indonesia is a bit like that. But there is not a single government right now in the world that is saying, if you are not white, we need to hunt you down. We had only one example of this, which was Nazi Germany, which was defeated, thankfully, thank the FSM, but not anymore, right? One government for a very short amount of time, I think two actually, add Italy to that, but two governments for a very short amount of time, and they're defeated. And yes, I agree. We should not let that happen again. We should, as soon as it tries to come back, we should just hit it with like whack-a-mole, right? I agree with that. We shouldn't let it. We should call it out. But don't tell me that Islam is not a bigger problem, because it is. It definitely is. I'm not gonna. It's not the same problem. It's a bigger problem. That's. I don't even think that should be controversial. That's an obvious fact.
Mm. Well, the fact you're based in Canada and I'm based in Europe, and I think I get the area I live in. Unfortunately, it's East London. It's more, especially this area where I live in. I can't explicitly say where I am, but it's there are a lot of white people, working class as they call it, white people who are not the polished type. They are still white people, and they over the time for the past few years, I have seen a more gradual increase in hatred towards people like me, people of brown
Yeah,
disposition. But
this is the thing. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not saying that's not a problem. Okay, here's the thing: saying cancer is worse than AIDS is not a defense of AIDS. Okay, if I say
no,
cancer is worse
it's
than
not. It's not a
AIDS,
different.
it's not saying AIDS is lovely.
I'm saying that Nazism is growing in some parts of the world, but um, the the general population who could become a Nazi has also harboring the thought that the Nazism kind of the racial superiority that they hold in their mind, and uh, that is also a problem. But I'm not actually arguing either way. I hear you what you're saying, and funny thing is nobody's, as you rightly said, nobody's bothered about the problems of Islam and the way it's killing its own people in different parts of the world. It looks like the media is more focused on minute issues where somebody owns the media, or at least a bigger part of it, which is which is actually of the wrong kind. I'm going to ask you about a few other things, especially on your poster. I was seeing come
Yeah, I'm
afterward.
writing a book about Islam. Already wrote one about God, why there is no God. Um, and now I'm working slowly on a book about Islam, which is a little bit more challenging
Why is that?
because it was easy to start define God, what I mean by God, and then try to say why there is no God. That was pretty easy, but when I started writing about Islam, I realized that I'm fighting a beast with seven heads, right? Instead of just
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
right.
So the next question, which is I'm hoping it would be kind of our last question, is this debate about freedom of speech. I know in America and in Canada also there is this debate that people, for example, in London, United Kingdom, we may have seen it in a different format, but in America and Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and all these things, there has been a lot of lectures cancelled and people cancelled. What
Right.
is the deal? Can you give us a kind of a summary for people who has no clue about what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, universities used to be a place where people go and get challenged, get their ideas challenged and stuff. But I actually don't know how common this is, but it seems like it's becoming very difficult for many ex-Muslims or people with opinions that are not PC friendly to
Teaching
get
is politically correct.
yeah to get platforms in universities. Um, I mean, a lot of people say that's a violation of free speech. I don't know if it's a violation of free speech. I would just call it really bad policy because it's a university. That's where you go and get different ideas, right? And even you challenge the ideas that you don't like. The reason why I wouldn't call it against freedom of speech is because it's their platform, right? You have a right to your opinion. You don't have a right to an audience. You don't have a right to a platform. Unless some people could argue, well, these universities are publicly funded. So technically, if they're publicly funded, it should be it's a violation of freedom of speech. So there's an argument there. I don't know how I feel about that. But even if it's not a violation of, yeah, I mean, like here's people say like, oh, so and so is fighting for free speech, but they blocked me on Twitter. Haha, what hypocrites. Yeah, that's not the same thing. They could block you on Twitter. That's their platform. They just you being able to say, you having the right to say something doesn't mean that you have the right to force it on somebody to hear you, right? For the example I give is like, I don't have the right if I go to a church and all of a sudden start yelling at people like, hey, your God is a lie, you're all idiots. They have every right to kick me out because it's their fucking church, right? If they don't want me there, they have the right to kick me out. I'd be like, oh, you're violating my freedom of speech. No, that's their platform. They don't, if you can't just, it's like going on, some family is having dinner and me just jumping in and being like, hey, I'm going to read to you the Communist Manifesto. Or like, no, they get the fuck out of my house. Just because you have the right to say something, doesn't mean you get the right to say it anywhere you want. If you're saying it in public and somebody comes and shuts you down, like, and this is, if you're saying, people are, we post something on Atheist Republic and people say like, oh, you're being so offensive, why delete this post? They're like, well, just block us, go away. We didn't force. And people tell us like, why are you forcing? I want to let Muslims and Christians believe what they want. You guys are preaching and stuff. Like, what do you mean forcing? Do we put a gun and like watch our fucking memes, read our articles? Like, is that what we're doing? Because it's really easy not to go to a website. Like, if a book fucking offends you, just put it away. You don't have to read it, right? So we're not forcing content on anybody else. We're just putting it on our own fucking platforms. Anybody that is interested gets to come and see it. If they don't want it, they go away. I could just show you how to block us if you want. But when if you come to someone's platform, we try not to ban people as much as we can because we want people that people that disagree with us to be exposed to what we're saying, as long as they choose to. But if a page or a Twitter account bans or blocks somebody, they have every right to do that. Or if they say like, you're not welcome in our university, if they're not publicly funded, I think they have every right to do that. But even if they have the right to do that, and that's not a violation of freedom of speech, I do think it's bad. I still get to say it's bad policy. Just because something is not a violation of somebody's right doesn't make it okay, right? You could get to say, I think this is a very shitty idea because you're not providing your students with alternative viewpoints, right?
That's what I agree. I mean, uh, what's the worst that could happen?
Right. I mean, and you get to protest it too. But as long as your protest is not violent, and as long as your protest doesn't mean that this speech gets canceled, as long as you're not drowning out.
Yeah.
And again,
So
these.
recently,
Yeah.
I heard Richard Dawkins got cancelled, right?
Right.
What's the story behind who actually petitioned against him and on
This
what
was a radio
grounds?
show, right? I forgot the name of the radio station. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So I think he was supposed to be a guest, and then they sent him. And I actually didn't like the letter Dawkins wrote back to them. Okay, so they said like, "Oh, we didn't know you were so anti-Islam," which is weird. Like this text, how did you not know that? He's
Hello.
you know,
What?
Dawkins is the fucking Dawkins. Like now we can't have you. We value freedom of speech and blah blah blah, but this is too much. Something like in that. And Dawkins wrote the letters. I was a little bit disappointed with Dawkins' letter because he said, I don't fight Islam. I fight Islamism. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Dawkins? You have been fighting Islam, and that's why we like you, right?
Okay, those
And
are I think minute points, but generally,
that's not a minor point. That's a huge point. Islamism is what the fuck is Islamism? Okay, people say like, oh, Islam is okay. It's Islamism that's the problem because Islamism is political. Islam is not political. Are you fucking serious? Have you guys read the Quran? Islam is political. Islam is it's an ideology about dominating the whole
yes,
fucking
it's an
planet.
ideology, but when people believe them, as their code of life, they are not involved or engaging themselves in political activity. It's just like how they should live their life. That to them that is Islam. But when you use the
You're talking
Islam,
about Muslims, not about Islam. Okay,
well, Muslims
Islam.
follow Islam. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, here's the thing. Muslims follow. Some of them do. Some of them follow parts of it. Some of them try to follow
Yes,
all of it.
they cherry
But
pick between the things. That's what I'm trying to
no
say. But that,
Muslim. No Muslim represents all of Islam.
no,
Islam is an ideology that is supposed to cover every part of your life.
yeah,
It's
complete
supposed to
code of
cover
life.
every part of your life. So what you eat, what you wear, how to wipe your fucking ass,
How do
how
you
to
fart? Yeah, absolutely.
how to kill people, how to not to kill people, how the courts should work, how everything should work, including politics.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an all-inclusive ideology. Of course, politics is going to be part of that.
Yeah, it is. But when you bring that into a secular state and bring it as an alternative parallel to the secular system, then that is Islamism kind of being trying to encourage its way through the system and become as an alternative or maybe the main norm. And that's
No,
what I think people are trying to fight
no,
more
that's not
than what
Islamism
people are
becoming the
believing
norm.
in there.
That's Islam going through its phases. Okay, Islam, if it's the minority, does acts a certain way, but when it becomes more, it acts a different way, and then when it becomes a majority, it acts a different way. That's all Islam. That's part of Islam. Do you
Yeah.
think if 70% of UK was Muslim, it wouldn't turn into an Islamic theocracy? It would, right? I'm just, this is how it works.
Yeah. Well, let
I
me
mean,
give you an example of what's happening in Bangladesh. It's really interesting. Past few years, obviously, like everywhere else, there has been terrorist attacks, and although we started off as a more secular state, it's getting more and more Islamized, but it's not kind of obvious. Like suddenly one day, nobody is declaring that Islam is like now going to be the dominant thing. It's happening, but keeping the top layer kind of unscathed, and then gradually everything that we valued that are good, for example music, concerts, good education, all these things are gradually kind of being eaten out different ways. Even like today and yesterday we used to have a huge Bengali folk fest, like Bengali classical music fest, every year for a few days, and it used to be quite huge popular. Suddenly government decided that due to security concerns, we are going to
Yeah,
now
security.
cancel this.
This
This
is the
so-called
famous.
security concern,
This,
31st
this is
night,
the
there
number
is
one.
nothing 31st happening. On the 31st night, when people are supposed to be celebrating, military and police are blocking, barricading the road, saying that this is a security concern, you cannot enjoy. So everything is being blocked by this so-called security concern. And this is what's happening in Bangladesh, and I have a fear that it might happen everywhere else if we allow it to happen long enough.
This is why the governments love their terrorists, because everything becomes a security concern, and you get to do whatever the fuck you want because security comes. This is what Egypt is doing as well.
Yeah.
This is how Iran is spreading. Iran is a Shia regime, but they fucking love ISIS, even though they attack them. It's because of ISIS that Iran is managing to spread all over the fucking Middle East, because they're the one that are fighting it, right? Terrorists are always the best excuse for government to be able to remove people's, freedom.
Okay.
I mean, the United States did that too. But yeah, go ahead.
I think we had a last question, but then we went into different other places. There was one thing I wanted to talk, is this concept of ex-Muslim. I generally didn't have an issue with it, but recently I saw the Twitter handle called ex-Muslim TV that is quite popular and kind of takes snippets of different things and publishes it, and quite a lot of people likes it. I had a little 30-second video on Twitter supporting ex-Muslim because hashtag, and it was extremely popular at some point. Council of Ex-Muslim Britain, and there is this girl called Raihana Sultan. They jointly kind of created this, and I did a little video for them, and it was quite popular like 2-3 years ago. And the ex-Muslim TV recently publishes it, and I was astonished by the number of people shared it and retweeted it. And more astonishing is that a lot of them are Christian. And they think, when I'm saying I am an ex-Muslim, they're thinking that I have left Islam for another religion. I had to come out and kind of explain that I'm an ex-Muslim atheist. I'm not coming to your religion.
Here's the thing,
How
though.
do you deal with this?
Okay, yeah, the thing is that you can't, you have to just be true to yourself. People, no matter what you say, people that are against what, so I'm against A and against B, right? But when I talk against A, people of Camp B are always going to come and use it.
Yeah, they clap.
Yeah, and when I talk against B, people from Group A are going to come use my message against B. And if you want to say something that nobody can use for something that you don't agree with, then you have to just shut up, because you can't. Okay, you can't, because anything you say is going to be used. If it goes viral, at some point it's going to be used by people that you disagree with. You have to just be true to yourself, and if you're against A and B, just make sure you call out A and call out B at the same time. But you can't really control that. You can't just be like, I have to say something, but I'm worried that it's going to be used for something else. But then they say nothing. Then they say nothing. Because there is nothing you can say that some other group is not going to use it for something bad, right? Yeah. You can't be worried about that. You can be worried about that, but you can't shut yourself up because of that, right? Just call out Islam, call out racist, call out whatever the fuck you want. And even if you don't call them out, right? If you think like, oh, you know what? I'm going to just focus on the alt-right because that's what I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate about against being Islam. My main activism is animal rights. My main activism is global warming. My main activism is anti-Nazism. My main activism is against that. You're already fucking doing more than most people, okay? Whatever your activism is. So good on you. And don't worry about those other group of people using it, because you're sending a message that is, as long as you are true to your message, as long as you know what I said is not wrong, just send it out there. Because if it's going to be losing your voice is a bigger harm than those people. Because guess what? You know what? Let's say that Christian is spreading it, thinking like, oh, they're spreading Christianity against Islam. Maybe through that Christian, an atheist finds you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe some Muslim finds it and finds it maybe like, maybe not all ex-Muslims are. Maybe they don't even change their mind. Maybe they just feel like, we shouldn't be like this to ex-Muslims, right?
Sometimes.
Maybe. And here's another thing. Sometimes let's say for example, I say something against Islam, and I get some followers that are, you know, alt-right, right? And because they're like, yeah, fuck Islam and fuck Muslims. And then I come and say another tweet, let's say because of that I got 5 followers that are alt-right, right? And then I send another tweet and say, like, we need to defend Muslims human rights, right? Just because we disagree with them on Islam doesn't mean we should violate their human rights. And let's say from these 5 people, 4 of them like, fuck you, you're a Muslim apologist, blah blah blah, and they unfollow me, right? But maybe one of them is like, huh, that's a weird attitude.
Yeah,
I've
you
never heard
just
of
educated one guy
maybe,
out
like,
of alt-rightism.
yeah, maybe, like, I never knew. Yeah, I have fears against Islam, but I never thought
Yeah,
that
yeah.
could be against Islam, but not against its main victims that are Muslims. I never thought about it like that. So maybe even though this is why I'm not against going on alt-right platforms, because when you get, like, I was on Rebel Media and people were like, yeah, you're on an alt-right platform. Like, yeah, we need to fucking, this is interesting. If I go on Muslim platforms, nobody like, oh, you're being on, you're agreeing with Muslims because you're in power, right? Because no, we need to reach out to them. But when I go on alt-right platforms, you're like, oh, you're now friends with them, you're buddy with them, right? I like, what the fuck, for example, we had Ruben on our secular jihadist,
Yeah, I heard of it.
Dave
Yeah.
Rubin, right? And we attacked his positions, okay? And people were like, "Oh, you're friends of Ruben," no, even though we constantly attack his position. And he was
I
very
don't
friendly.
understand what's the problem with being friends with Ruben. I mean, I've been to his show
I
as
don't know,
well
but,
in
but,
the early days, and I said sometimes really weird things, saying that the Islamists and the ultra-white nationalists may be colluding at the back end, and that got me so much hatred. I don't know why, and it
yeah.
was quite weird.
A friend of mine, Casper Rigsby, told me that, one thing he learned from video games is that if you don't see enemies in your path, you're going the wrong way. But so don't worry about haters. The more haters you have, the more difference you probably are making.
Yeah.
But but here's the thing: I had like this Muslim guy on my show, American Muslim, and he came on
Which one?
Atheist
The secular jihadist?
No, this was on Atheist Republic YouTube.
Oh, I see.
Haven't been growing that much, so I'm recently paying more attention to that. So he came on Atheist Republic YouTube, and he defended why it's okay to have sex with 9-year-olds.
What the fuck?
And he defended why it's okay to kill ex-Muslims, and he defended why it's okay to beat your wife. Okay, and I didn't interrupt him much. I let him speak because I wanted the audience to see that, not all Muslims, not all Muslims are your Majid Nawaz or your Imam Tawhidis, right? This is also Islam, right? And everything he said was consistent with Hadith and the Quran, right?
Yeah.
And but not a single person came to me and said, like, Armin is defending pedophilia because of course I wasn't. I was trying to.
Well, you were not saying it, but you let that guy say those things.
I let those guys say those things, and not a single person came to me and said, like, Armin, you're now defending killing ex-Muslims.
Well,
Armin, you're now defending
I would have put a big red kind of alert thing on the right there, saying this is dangerous. Do not listen to it. Do not listen to it.
No, I didn't, because I knew nobody would do that. I would have to do that if I had an alt-right person there. If I had an alt-right member there, and I didn't constantly fucking tell him how fucking such an asshole he is and such a fucking racist bigot he is, and constantly interrupt him, if I didn't do that, I would be called an apologist for him. But I let this guy speak most of the time. I know nobody's going to think that I'm defending this guy. I know nobody, not a single person came and said that.
I should go and watch this episode now. This is
Yeah.
dangerous.
No,
Right.
It's not, because people are more. Here's the thing: I send this to my Muslim friends, and they're fucking shocked. And I tell them, like, yeah, this is what actually your book teaches. It is, because I know most Muslims are better than Islam. Okay, most Muslims are better than
Lucky
Islam.
for us, yeah.
Yeah, because they are. But the thing is that makes Islam more dangerous, because it has a cover under these good people that are Muslims are the excuse for Islam to spread. It's the covering for this dangerous idea.
Yeah.
Because every time they point out that Islam is dangerous, they point out that these good people are being used as a cover for a dangerous ideology.
Here's an idea. Have you guys actually had an episode in your secular jihadist titled "What Do We Do with Muslims?" As in, how do we, as you
That's
said, reach out to them?
okay. You
How
should
do we
title
fix them?
something. Yeah, okay. But don't title it like that because people are gonna because people are gonna compare it to the Jew problem
Oh, I see.
title.
No, no, no.
What
how
do
do
we do
we
with these
fix them
Muslims?
basically?
Right. Fix. Okay. Again, see, here's the thing. I know you have such good intentions, but I could tell you the phrase. You have to be very careful about these
Politically
phrases.
correct about the words that I
Yeah,
use?
because no, you don't have to be. But I'm sad that you have the way you're phrasing it will be taken, and people will think that you mean something else.
Well, people
How
are
do
already kind of
you just said
geared
how do we
towards
fix
taking an
Muslims? And
offense on
people are
anything we
gonna
say,
take that.
right?
Yeah, yeah, but it's just becoming so difficult to talk about anything. Anyways, but so this is
Well, you
what you
know what I'm trying
here.
to say. I mean,
I know
as you said,
what you're
how do
trying
we
to say
reach
because
out to the Muslims to fix?
I know what you're trying to say because I know you're a good person, right? But I'm telling you that people will take these and will try to. Anyways, so because I know how these other people from the other side will try to demonize what we're saying, the way I would phrase it is, how can we reach out to Muslims, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that's what you mean because I know what kind of a person you
Of
are,
course,
right?
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, of course that's what you mean. But okay, so how can we reach out to Muslims? And I think my strategy is by listening to them, and before you point out what you disagree with them on, find things that you agree with them on, right? And point them out, okay? And then
Okay,
they
so finding a common ground first.
yeah, I mean there should be and then they feel like okay, and then find something to learn from them, right? Most people have something, they know something that you don't know, right? So admit that you got educated. So first of all, find something that you agree with them on and point that out. Let them educate you on something and admit to them that you just got educated by them
Sorry,
on
are
something.
you talking about interpersonal conversation, or are you
Yes.
talking about a global kind of
Well,
general way?
it's both because whenever you do this, make sure you get it recorded on YouTube or something because
No, no.
it's
My,
such a
my main question was generally how, because you were saying earlier that we have seen that not all Muslims actually subscribe to those radical ideas,
right.
but there are some who does. But if we take them out and just take them out as in don't worry about them at the moment, but address only the Muslims that we think we can work with. Generally, how do we collectively address them, and how can we reach out to them so that at some point at the end of that exercise they realize what sort of bullshit they've been living with, and then how can they leave
Well,
those,
okay, so there's
kind of a macro way of addressing.
there's different things, right? Let's say, for example, there are Muslims that are fighting for gay rights, right? And I can I can do these things at the same time, and they're not a contradiction. And people think there's a contradiction. I could tell these Muslims that I think what they're doing is not consistent with Islam, okay? But at the same time, work with them in fighting against homophobia, right? And the way I do that is like to tell them that, okay, I'm going to tell you that I think you're not following Islam, but that's not an attack on you. If from where I'm coming from, that's a compliment. Mm-hmm. And it might not sound like a compliment, but please try to put yourself in my position and what I'm saying, and realize that when I say you are a Muslim that is better than Islam, that's a compliment. And also I want to, and actually I've had success with that when I explain to that, and I work with them, and I can work with them again. A lot of Muslims fight for freedom of speech, and I work with them, and a lot of Muslims fight for gay rights, and I work with them, even if I point out that that's not consistent with Islam. I will point out, I will not, shy away from saying that. Because I think that I can't work with these people. I know you have to say that, but at the same time I try to appeal to them and be like, this is not an attack on you. Okay, you have to understand that even though you might take this personally, and Islam is part of your identity, for me Islam is an idea, And because I get your point that for you this seems like a personal attack, so please try to understand, put yourself in my shoe, and understand. For me, this is not a personal attack on you.
That is
This is
very
just me.
positive, I would
This is
have
me.
to say.
Yeah,
Definitely. Very
yeah.
positive.
For me,
And
this is a disagreement. Yeah.
my idea was to, in your Secular Jihadist podcast, have you actually discussed these things as well in one of the
Yes.
episodes?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have not heard all of them, but to my audience, I would say go and, listen to all of those episodes. I'll add the link in the, if you're watching it in YouTube, I'll add the link in the description. And
Right.
if it's in Facebook, I'll also add it in the description as
Right.
well. And great things you guys are doing. I definitely have to
Can
say.
I just clarify something?
Yeah,
Because a
what's
lot of people say that if you don't follow Islam, you're not really a Muslim, right?
right.
And that's not true. I would say that these things are not Islam, but that doesn't mean they're not Muslim. Because for you to be a Muslim, you just have to believe that God is Allah and Muhammad is His prophet and the Quran is the true word of God, and you're a Muslim. Even if you're a shitty Muslim, if you're a bad Muslim, that means you're a good person, right? But if you're not, even if you've never read the fucking Quran, but you think that's the word of God, that you're still a Muslim. Even in Islam, you learn that most Muslims are going to go to hell. What does that mean? That means most Muslims, according to Islam, are not following Islam. Most Muslims are bad Muslims, right? Just like Christianity, as long as a Christian, if you believe Jesus is your Lord and Savior, and as long as you believe in that, you're a Christian. Even if you don't go to church, even if you have sex before marriage, that belief is enough to make you a Christian, even if you don't follow Christianity, right? So what is true Islam is what's written in the Quran and what's Sunnah, right? But what is a true Muslim is not dependent on you following Islam. It just depends on you whether you believe these things or not. You could be a really crappy Muslim, which is most Muslims, because they're decent human beings.
Brilliant. No, I think positivism is at the end of the day is the best message we can give out to them, and to the rest to the atheist community as well, because I can see there is a lot of hate. Maybe there is a hate for Islam itself, but somehow people don't have clear understanding, and also young atheists, a lot of them somehow think that a hate against Islam should be a hate against a Muslim, which is
no.
not
Actually, this is what I say. I say my hate for Islam comes from my love for its victims, who are mostly Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Armin, I think we've kind of talked about for an hour, and we would love to actually have you another session, another day, and continue this discussion. But this was a really, really enlightening discussion for me. And we may have touched on few different issues and topics, and I'm sure the discussion happens in other places too. So whoever you've been watching this discussion right now, Armin Navabi is a great activist, and I think for the time being, he's been actively taking part in different talks, and the podcast that he's doing. He's writing books, and Atheist Republic, he and his team is all doing great work, and I would ask everyone to support and kind of like, share, tweet, and everything, and kind of join the cause, because Armin's intentions, as you rightly heard, is not of hate but of positivism and support for the greater the community and for the world. So
actually just recently made it very easy. If you go to atheistrepublic.com, there's these green buttons that you could click on, and you could record your audio. And we have this new podcast called Atheist Republic Voicemails. We just had our second episode out. So basically, it's your voicemails from all around the world. It's a podcast with no host, just atheist voices from all over the planet.
Brilliant. So, thank you so much, Armin, for being with us, and for taking your time, and you're sharing your opinions with us. I'm sure I could have done better, at least as a host, but
No, you're great.
I don't do much. I have become very regular these days, and I apologize for whoever. I get a lot of inbox saying, why don't you do more shows? I would love to do more shows if I had some time and some motivation, because what happens in Bangladesh sometimes demoralizes me, but when I see people like Armin, it also gives me a great hope. So on that note, I would like to say goodbye, and if you see it in Facebook or YouTube, please do share it with everyone else. and keep sharing, keep getting engaged with what we are trying to do. I know we are very small in terms of the greater grand scheme of things, but every little helps. And at some point, this movement that the atheists and from the Muslim background or any other background are trying to do for the the globe, humanity, may become the future. So on that note, thank you so much wherever you are watching from. Stay safe and be positive, and Darwin bless. In